The outer border of the Galactic Empire had always been quiet. Patrol fleets drifted lazily through the cold void, scanning for anomalies, pirate activity, or signs of rival civilizations. Life on these edge stations was predictable, almost boring. The officers and crews were used to long periods of nothing, interrupted only by minor trade disputes or stray meteor storms. But that quiet was about to shatter. On one routine sweep, a surveillance squad detected a blip that did not belong to anything they had seen before. At first, the officers assumed it was a glitch, a stray particle triggering a sensor. But the readings persisted. The vessel appeared far beyond the usual limits of the Empire's outer frontier. Its shape was unlike anything in the official archives. There were no familiar contours, no standard propulsion trails. It seemed to move without effort, gliding through space as though the rules that governed the rest of the galaxy did not apply to it. The squad's commander reported the finding to the nearest Imperial research station. Within hours, the small, isolated base became a hub of nervous activity. Analysts hunched over consoles, comparing scans to every ship design in the database. They checked known experimental models, private military vessels, and even outlaw schematics. Nothing matched. Every possible comparison failed. The vessel's material composition was unknown. Its energy signature was unlike anything catalogued by the time the High Council received the report. Unease had already spread through the Empire's communication channels. The Council had dealt with unknown vessels before, but this one was different. It was not just foreign or unfamiliar. It defied explanation. It moved without emitting heat or radiation in the usual patterns. Its speed fluctuated without any recognizable propulsion system. Some scientists whispered that it might be a relic from an ancient civilization, long lost to history. Others feared it could be a scout from a more advanced species, one that could challenge the Empire's dominance. The news reached the Empire's capital through secure channels, and panic quietly began to ripple through the halls of power. Unlike the frontier officers, those in command had little patience for uncertainty. They demanded immediate answers, even as analysts admitted that none existed. Debates erupted over what the Empire should do. Should they attempt diplomacy? Should they prepare for war? Or should they simply ignore the vessel and hope it moved on? Every option felt dangerous. Meanwhile, the mysterious vessel continued deeper into Imperial space. It ignored repeated hails, neither responding nor displaying any hostile activity. It simply moved, silent and confident. The patrol fleets assigned to monitor it were uneasy. The officers whispered among themselves, comparing notes, exchanging theories. Some thought it could be a rogue experiment from a distant planet. Others were convinced it was a weapon, sent deliberately to test the Empire's defenses. Fear began to settle into their routines. Even seasoned captains, who had faced pirate attacks and border skirmishes, felt a chill at the sight of this vessel. For the civilians living on outer colonies, life carried on with only vague awareness of the new arrival. Traders noticed increased traffic from military convoys and heightened security, but they did not understand why. Rumors spread in hushed tones across the colonies. Some claimed the Empire had detected an alien warship. Others whispered about ancient machines, capable of unimaginable destruction. No one knew the truth, and the lack of clarity only fueled fear. Back at the research stations, analysts worked around the clock. They discovered that the vessel emitted energy pulses, unlike anything they had measured before. The pulses were brief and irregular, not intended for communication or attack as far as anyone could tell. Theories ran wild. Perhaps the vessel was scanning for something. Perhaps it was sending data to a civilization far beyond known space. Or perhaps it was a warning. But if it was a warning, of what? And why did it appear here at the edge of the Empire? And now, as the hours passed, the vessel's presence forced the Empire to make decisions it had hoped never to face. Fleets were mobilized, although no one knew if the ship would attack or simply continue its silent journey. Officers and politicians argued about strategy. Some wanted a direct approach, sending the largest warships to confront it. Others advocated caution, fearing that any aggressive move could provoke a disaster. In every discussion, the same question lingered. What did this vessel want? At one small observation post, a young officer stared at the screen for hours. His hands hovered over the controls, but he did not move. He felt a strange mix of awe and terror. The ship was beautiful in a way no one could describe, sleek, precise, and completely alien. Yet it carried with it a sense of inevitability, as though it had a purpose that the humans could neither understand nor influence. He realized that, for the first time in decades, the Empire faced something beyond its control. Then came the first sign that the vessel was more than just a curiosity. Without warning, it adjusted its trajectory, heading straight for the Empire's inner patrol zones. The speed was gradual at first, almost imperceptible, then faster, far faster than anything previously recorded. Alarm sirens rang through multiple stations, and emergency protocols were enacted. Officers scrambled to intercept, to track, to understand. The human crews who had spent years following orders now felt the weight of uncertainty. They were not just observing history, they were part of it docked in the control rooms. Analysts recorded every detail. They noted the vessel's acceleration, its energy emissions, and its unusual magnetic fluctuations. Reports were sent to the High Council, who struggled to maintain composure. The word panic began circulating quietly among staff, though no official admission was made. Outside, fleets took positions in orbit around key colonies, ready to respond to any potential threat. The Empire was on edge, and every person involved could feel it. While the leaders debated, the vessel continued its course. It did not fire weapons, it did not attempt to communicate, and yet its very presence caused more disruption than any known enemy fleet could. Traders canceled shipments, scientists worked overtime, and military officers issued commands with an urgency they had never needed before. Fear, fascination, and frustration mingled into a tense atmosphere that spread from the outer borders to the heart of the Empire. By the end of the first day, one fact was clear: the Empire no longer controlled the situation. They had encountered something they could not categorize, and that lack of understanding had thrown their entire system into tension. The vessel, silent and unyielding, continued to drift deeper into imperial space, while fleets, governments, and colonies all prepared for the unknown. No one knew who or what controlled the ship, where it came from, or what its presence meant. For the people on the edge of the Empire, life would never be the same. What had started as a quiet patrol mission had become the first step toward an event that could change the galaxy forever. In that moment, even the most experienced officers realized a simple truth: the rules of the universe had just shifted, and the Empire might not survive the consequences. The moment the Empire realized that the mysterious vessel was moving deeper into its territory, fear spread like wildfire through the capital. For centuries, the Empire had maintained strict control over its borders. Patrols, observation posts, and intelligence networks ensured that almost nothing could move through its space undetected. But this ship had slipped past every system with ease. The fact that no one could identify it, no one could predict its intentions, left everyone uneasy. Inside the council chambers, officials argued endlessly. Some insisted on sending fleets to intercept the ship immediately. They wanted to show strength and, if necessary, destroy the unknown vessel before it could reach the inner colonies. Others urged caution, pointing out that attacking a completely unknown technology could be catastrophic. There were no rules for what they faced. Any aggressive move might provoke a response they could not survive. Yet doing nothing also felt dangerous. Every passing hour without action increased the risk that the vessel could gather information or position itself strategically. The debates quickly turned into arguments. Voices rose. Papers and digital files were slammed onto tables. For the first time in decades, a sense of panic had reached the highest levels of government. Advisors whispered in corners, warning of political consequences if the situation was mishandled. Colonies far from the capital were already reporting signs of fear. Communications had been intercepted, rumors had spread, and the news that the empire might be vulnerable had reached both allies and rivals. Meanwhile, on the frontier, the officers tracking the vessel struggled to make sense of what they were seeing. Every maneuver it made seemed designed to confuse or challenge them. Sometimes it slowed, appearing almost hesitant, and then, without warning, it would accelerate faster than any known propulsion system allowed. Sensors would briefly lose it, only to pick it up again in a location that defied logic. The crews who had trained for years to deal with emergencies felt a deep, unsettling uncertainty. They had faced pirates, rogue factions, and even minor alien encounters before. But this was something entirely different. The pressure on the patrol fleets became unbearable. Commands arrived almost constantly from the capital, urging updates, demanding results, and expecting solutions where none existed. Officers worked long hours, eyes fixed on screens, fingers hovering over controls, ready to act at a moment's notice. Yet every option seemed flawed. Any attempt to approach the vessel could trigger an unpredictable reaction. Any mistake could escalate the situation into open conflict. The tension was not just professional, it was personal. Lives depended on these decisions, and no one wanted to be responsible for a catastrophe. Civilians, meanwhile, were beginning to notice unusual patterns. Merchant ships reported delays and sudden diversions. Border colonies saw increased security, and families in outer sectors whispered about strange lights in the sky. Some claimed that the mysterious ship had been spotted near mining stations, moving silently among the asteroids. Others were convinced it carried advanced weapons and would strike at the heart of the Empire soon. Fear began spreading faster than the ship itself, and in some areas, panic had already set in. People canceled travel, stored food, and avoided open space, as if preparing for a battle they could not see. Within the capital, the Empire's analysts worked around the clock. Every energy pulse emitted by the vessel was scrutinized. Every fragment of data was compared to known technology. But the more they studied, the less they understood. Some suggested that it was not just advanced, it was beyond comprehension. The materials it was made of did not respond to scans the way normal matter did. The power it radiated could not be measured with standard instruments. Even the brightest minds admitted they had no answers. Meanwhile, the Council began discussing the impossible. Could this be a prelude to war? Was the vessel the first sign of an invasion? Some feared that its very presence was meant to test the Empire's defenses, to observe weaknesses before striking. Others believed that it was not a weapon at all, but a probe, perhaps even a warning. The truth was unknown, and the uncertainty gnawed at everyone. Leaders who had always relied on certainty and control felt powerless for the first time. As the debate continued, some officers took matters into their own hands. Patrols adjusted their formations, trying to anticipate the vessel's movements. They attempted to broadcast messages in every frequency available. They even considered boarding it with small scout teams, though the idea was dismissed as too dangerous. The ship responded to nothing. It did not slow, did not communicate, did not retreat. It simply moved, indifferent to the actions of those around it. The human crews tracking it began to feel that they were not dealing with a normal enemy, or even a normal object. It was something else entirely, and that realization filled them with both fear and awe. Colonies closest to the ship's projected path began experiencing the first tangible effects of its presence. Communications networks went offline sporadically, sometimes cutting entire stations off from the Empire. Navigation systems acted unpredictably. Even minor devices registered energy anomalies, flickering in ways that could not be explained. People on these colonies were confused, anxious, and increasingly fearful. Local leaders tried to reassure them, but without information from the capital, their words rang hollow. The unknown vessel was creating chaos simply by existing. Back in the capital, the council finally admitted that standard strategies would not work. Plans were drafted, revised, and discarded at a dizzying pace. Fleets were repositioned, patrols redeployed, and emergency protocols issued across multiple systems. But no one truly knew what they were preparing for. The Empire was responding not to an attack, but to fear itself. Fear of the unknown had become as powerful as any weapon, and it spread faster than the fastest ships in the fleet. At the same time, scientists continued their work. They dissected energy readings, studied trajectory patterns, and tested every theory they could imagine. Some believed the vessel was autonomous, guided by artificial intelligence of unimaginable complexity. Others speculated that it was a living machine, capable of independent thought. The truth remained out of reach, and every new discovery seemed to deepen the mystery. For the people working closest to the situation, life had become a constant battle against anxiety. Crews slept little, ate even less, and spent hours staring at screens filled with numbers they could not interpret. Stress levels soared. Simple mistakes, once easy to correct, now had potentially catastrophic consequences. Every day felt like walking on the edge of a knife, and every night brought nightmares of fleets destroyed or colonies lost. Despite all this, some individuals found moments of awe. Watching the vessel move, seemingly effortless and deliberate, some officers felt a strange beauty in its design. It was like observing a force of nature, powerful, unknowable, and completely beyond human control. In those moments, fear mixed with fascination. They realized that whatever this ship was, it had already changed their understanding of the galaxy. By the end of the first week, the Empire was locked in a tense standoff with the unknown vessel. No attack had occurred, no direct communication had been established, yet panic had already reshaped policies, fleets, and everyday life. The borders were tighter, the colonies more cautious, and the council more divided than ever. People whispered that the Empire might never regain the sense of security it had known before. Even as the fear grew, some officers and analysts refused to give in to despair. They continued to study the vessel, looking for patterns, for clues, for anything that could offer hope. They shared observations, tested theories, and tried to predict the next move. Each breakthrough was small, each success temporary, but it reminded everyone that knowledge, even partial knowledge, was power, and through it all, the vessel moved silently, steadily, ignoring every attempt to interfere or communicate. Its presence alone had forced the Empire to confront its limits, to face fear, and to reconsider its place in the galaxy. What had once seemed impossible, the sudden appearance of an unknown force, had now become the Empire's most urgent problem. The humans in control of the fleets, the analysts in the labs, and the leaders in the capital all understood that the next decision could change the fate of billions. By the end of the second week, one thing was clear. The Empire was no longer the dominant force it had always assumed itself to be. It was reacting, scrambling, uncertain. And the mysterious vessel, silent and relentless, had become the catalyst for a crisis unlike any other in living memory. The Empire's fleets had been on high alert for days. Every officer and crew member felt the tension deep in their bones. The mysterious vessel continued to move through Imperial space, silent and precise, ignoring all attempts at communication. Commands from the capital had become urgent, almost frantic. The council demanded answers, but the officers tracking the ship had none to give. It was not hostile, at least. Not yet, but its presence alone was enough to unnerve everyone. The first direct encounter was accidental. A squadron of patrol ships had been following the vessel on a careful intercept course, hoping to observe it without provoking any reaction. The officers were tense, constantly adjusting their positions, scanning for any sign of weaponry, propulsion changes, or communication signals. They had prepared for every possibility, but nothing in their training matched the reality of the situation. The vessel moved unpredictably, yet deliberately, as if it was aware of every maneuver they attempted. Then it happened. One of the patrol ships, moving slightly ahead of the formation to get a better observation angle, suddenly experienced a complete systems shutdown. Lights flickered, engines cut out, and all communication links with the fleet went dead. Panic spread immediately among the squadron. Officers scrambled to re-establish control, but every attempt to react was delayed or blocked by unexplained interference. The ship drifted silently, powerless, as if the unknown vessel had reached out and touched it without physically being there. The other ships in the formation quickly moved closer, trying to assist their disabled comrade. But as they approached, they too began to experience unusual interference. Shields flickered, navigation systems glitched, and sensors went haywire. It became clear that the mysterious vessel was capable of affecting technology in ways that no one could understand. The squadron commander realized that they were not dealing with a normal ship. They were in the presence of something far beyond their comprehension. Back at the capital, news of the incident reached the High Council almost immediately. Analysts were baffled. The data showed no weapons discharge, no energy blasts, nothing that could explain why the fleet had been disabled. The only thing recorded was a pulse of unknown energy radiating from the vessel, disrupting all nearby technology. Some advisors suggested that the ship had an advanced form of electromagnetic control. Others whispered that it might be a living entity, capable of interacting with machinery as though it were an extension of itself. The incident became known as the first contact event. While no human lives were lost, the psychological impact was immense. Fleet officers had always trained for combat, for emergencies, for hostile encounters. But this was different. They had faced pirates, rebel factions, and alien raiders before, but never anything that could incapacitate their ships without firing a weapon. The first contact event reminded everyone that the universe was far bigger and far stranger than they had ever imagined. In the aftermath, fleets were reorganized. Patrols were doubled, and ships were equipped with emergency protocols for unknown interference. The Council authorized increased research into the energy pulses emitted by the vessel, desperate to find a way to counteract them. Officers worked around the clock, analyzing every fragment of data, trying to understand how the ship could disable an entire squadron without even touching it. Yet the more they studied, the less they understood. The crew members who had experienced the event firsthand were shaken. Many reported a feeling of helplessness, of being watched and studied. They described the ship as deliberate, almost intelligent in the way it moved and reacted. Some claimed it seemed aware of their fear, adjusting its position as if testing them, observing their responses. Senior officers tried to reassure them, reminding them that no one had been harmed, but the fear lingered. Even seasoned veterans admitted they had never encountered anything like this. Meanwhile, the mysterious vessel continued its journey. It did not stop to communicate, did not display hostility, and did not retreat. Its path remained focused, precise, and unerring. Observers on other patrols reported seeing strange patterns of energy radiating from it, like faint ripples spreading across space itself. Scientists theorized that the pulses might be a form of data transmission, a message encoded in a language that humans could not yet understand. Others believed that the vessel might be scanning for something, observing life and technology without making contact. The first contact event also had broader effects. News of the encounter spread quickly through imperial channels, reaching colonies and trade stations. Even those far from the frontier heard whispers about the mysterious ship and the disabled squadron. Fear began to spread beyond the military. Civilians worried that the vessel might be the start of a larger invasion, or worse, a weapon designed to destroy entire sectors. Traders delayed shipments, families reconsidered space travel, and the Empire's sense of control began to erode. Despite the fear, some officers were determined to learn from the encounter. Teams of engineers and scientists analyzed every detail of the disabled ships, searching for vulnerabilities or patterns. They experimented with shielding, recalibrated sensors, and tested new protocols designed to resist the unknown pulses. Progress was slow and often frustrating. Every solution seemed temporary, and every new discovery raised more questions than it answered. Yet for the first time, there was a sense of cautious hope-proof that understanding might eventually come. The encounter also revealed the limits of the Empire's preparedness. For years, they had relied on known technology, predictable behavior, and hierarchical command. The mysterious vessel forced them to confront the unknown, to acknowledge that not everything in the galaxy could be cataloged or controlled. Officers realized that strategy alone was not enough. They needed adaptability, creativity, and the willingness to accept uncertainty. For many, this was both terrifying and exhilarating. On the ground in frontier colonies, the first contact event became a topic of endless discussion. People speculated about the nature of the vessel, its origin, and its purpose. Some believed it was a scout from a highly advanced alien civilization. Others thought it was a remnant of an ancient species, long extinct but still powerful. Stories spread of its capabilities, some exaggerated, some based on observation, and each story fueled the growing tension across the Empire. In the council chambers, debates grew even more heated. Some leaders argued that the Empire must take an offensive approach to strike the vessel before it could reach critical areas. Others insisted that diplomacy or observation might be wiser, to avoid provoking a force they could not understand. For the first time, the Council faced decisions without precedent. Every choice carried risk, and every delay allowed uncertainty to grow. Back in space, the vessel continued its silent journey. Patrols followed cautiously, maintaining a careful distance, while analysts monitored every movement. Crews remained alert, knowing that another pulse, another unexpected event, could happen at any moment. They worked tirelessly, driven by fear, curiosity, and the desire to protect the Empire. Even as anxiety built, there was a shared sense that they were witnessing something historic, something that would be remembered for generations. By the end of the encounter, the Empire understood one undeniable truth. This was not an ordinary ship. It was far more advanced than anything they had ever faced, and its capabilities were beyond their comprehension. For the first time, officers, scientists, and leaders alike felt the galaxy's vastness and mystery in a very real way. The encounter was not just a tactical event, it was a wake-up call. The first contact event left lasting effects. Training procedures were rewritten, fleets were restructured, and research into unknown energy fields became a top priority. Crews, who had once believed they were prepared for any challenge, now approached their duties with humility and caution. They understood that bravery alone would not be enough to face what lay ahead. Knowledge, adaptability, and careful observation would be their greatest weapons. And through it all, the mysterious vessel continued. It did not attack. It did not retreat. It simply moved with a purpose that no one could understand. Its presence alone had changed the Empire forever, forcing them to confront fear, uncertainty, and the limits of their own understanding. Every officer and crew member who had witnessed it knew that the galaxy was no longer predictable. The rules had changed, and the next encounter could decide the fate of entire sectors. Even as the Empire worked to recover from the shock, one unspoken truth lingered. They were no longer the masters of their own destiny. The mysterious vessel, silent and unstoppable, had taken that control away. And the galaxy, once so orderly and known, had suddenly become a place of wonder, danger, and endless possibility. The first contact event had shaken the Empire to its core, but the ripple effects were just beginning. Even without a single shot fired, fear had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Colonies near the frontier were on edge, trade routes slowed to a crawl, and the Empire's enemies were watching closely, waiting for any sign of weakness. What had started as a mysterious presence had now become a catalyst for a much larger crisis. In the capital, council members struggled to maintain control. Debates raged for hours about how to respond. Some argued that the Empire must strike first to prevent the vessel from learning more about their defenses. Others warned that any aggressive action might trigger disaster, since no one truly understood what they were dealing with. Every decision felt like stepping into a storm without knowing what lay ahead. As discussions continued, tension grew in every sector of the Empire. Fear and uncertainty had a way of spreading faster than orders or data streams. Meanwhile, the mysterious vessel moved steadily through space, indifferent to the chaos it had caused. Patrol fleets attempted to shadow it, but each ship faced strange disruptions, systems glitches, and unexplained pulses of energy. Officers reported feelings of unease, as if the vessel were aware of their presence and observing their reactions. Some crews described it as almost intelligent, testing them, calculating, waiting. The Empire had prepared for threats it could see and understand, but this was different. This was unknown. Colonies closest to the projected path of the vessel began to take precautions. Governors ordered emergency drills, evacuation plans, and increased security. Civilians whispered in fear of invasion or destruction. Merchants canceled shipments, fearing that trade lanes would be disrupted or that fleet escorts might fail. Farmers and miners stared at the skies, wondering if their homes would survive whatever was coming. The Empire's reach could not protect them from something that seemed capable of bypassing every defense. As the vessel continued, misunderstandings began to occur. Some neighboring factions, observing the Empire's unusual movements and rapid mobilization, assumed the worst. They believed the Empire had discovered a new superweapon, something capable of disabling entire fleets with a single pulse. Panic set in among these powers, and they began preparing preemptive strikes. Intelligence reports were filled with rumors, exaggerations, and false interpretations of every movement. A single unknown ship had created tension that spanned hundreds of systems. Imperial officers found themselves caught in a delicate balancing act. They had to track the vessel, defend colonies, maintain supply lines, and reassure frightened civilians, all while knowing that any action could be misinterpreted. Orders were given and revised multiple times a day, creating confusion among fleets. For the first time, officers realized that strategy alone could not guarantee safety. They had to account for human emotion, fear, panic, and uncertainty as much as they accounted for enemy movements. The result was a chain reaction across the galaxy. One misinterpreted signal could trigger a full-scale mobilization. One colony reporting an anomaly could spark rumors of invasion. One fleet moving too aggressively could provoke a neighboring faction into striking first. The mysterious vessel had not fired a weapon, had not attacked, yet it had already destabilized the political balance. Humanity's rivals began to move in ways they never had before, and the Empire scrambled to respond. In the frontier fleets, the mood was tense. Officers worked day and night, monitoring the vessel and coordinating defenses. Engineers and scientists studied every pulse, every fluctuation, searching for a pattern. They tested new shielding protocols, recalibrated sensors, and trained crews to react to unexpected disruptions. Every day felt like walking on the edge of a blade, and every night brought little rest. The fear was constant, pressing down on every decision, every observation, every report sent back to the capital. Meanwhile, civilian populations began to feel the effects of war before it had even officially started. Supply lines slowed, communication delays grew longer, and whispers of conflict spread like wildfire. Fear made people suspicious of one another. Rumors flourished, creating tension between colonies and trade partners. Some factions even accused the empire of hiding information or preparing to attack, further escalating mistrust. The unknown vessel, though silent and distant, had indirectly triggered a chain of events that no one could control. In the council chambers, tensions reached a breaking point. Advisors shouted over each other, each convinced their plan was the only way to prevent catastrophe. Some proposed aggressive strikes against suspected rivals, while others insisted on defensive measures only. No one could agree, and yet every decision had to be made immediately. Time was no longer a luxury. Every moment the vessel continued its journey increased the risk that the galaxy would descend into conflict. As fleets maneuvered to intercept or observe the vessel. The first skirmishes of what would later be called the pre-war incidents occurred. Small confrontations erupted at trade checkpoints and border outposts. Ships misinterpreted each other's actions, opening fire prematurely or responding to false alarms. The energy pulses from the mysterious vessel were often blamed for these incidents, though no one could be certain. Still, fear and tension drove humans to act defensively, sometimes with disastrous consequences. Even as chaos spread, some individuals continued to focus on understanding the vessel. Scientists and officers worked tirelessly, analyzing data and searching for meaning in every anomaly. They experimented with new technologies, hoping to predict or even communicate with the vessel. Every discovery was small but vital. Every clue brought a sense of hope that understanding might eventually prevent disaster. Yet for every small victory, there were 10 questions that remained unanswered. The vessel's continued movement forced the Empire to confront its own limitations. For centuries, it had relied on control, hierarchy, and predictability. Now, none of those strengths seemed sufficient. The galaxy was larger and more complex than anyone had imagined, and the rules they had trusted no longer applied. Officers and leaders realized that their ability to adapt, to respond to uncertainty, and to make decisions in the absence of complete information would determine whether the Empire survived the growing crisis. Back in the colonies, the psychological effects of the vessel's presence became more pronounced. Families feared for their safety, traders feared for their livelihoods, and communities worried about political fallout. Even those far from the frontier began to feel the consequences. News feeds and communications were filled with reports of mobilization, skirmishes, and unusual activity. Panic, mistrust, and uncertainty spread faster than fleets ever could. People who had lived comfortably under the Empire's control now felt vulnerable and exposed. The chain reaction toward war was almost complete. Neighboring powers interpreted the Empire's actions as aggression. Minor skirmishes escalated into larger confrontations. Strategic positions were reinforced, fleets repositioned, and trade routes rerouted. The galaxy, once relatively stable, teetered on the edge of conflict. And all of it had been set in motion by a single mysterious vessel, silent and indifferent, moving steadily through space. Even in the midst of chaos, some officers and analysts found moments of clarity. They realized that fear, misunderstanding, and miscommunication were as dangerous as any weapon. The galaxy was not just at risk from the unknown vessel, it was at risk from its own reactions. Every misstep, every hasty decision, could escalate the situation into full-scale war. Humanity was learning, sometimes painfully, that intelligence, patience, and observation were as essential as firepower. By the end of this period, the Empire had begun to change. Policies were rewritten, fleets reorganized, and training procedures adapted to prepare for unpredictable events. The presence of the vessel had forced humans to reconsider everything they thought they knew about strategy, technology, and even themselves. Officers who had once relied solely on hierarchy now had to trust creativity, intuition, and cooperation. Scientists who had focused only on known technology were now exploring concepts that had once seemed impossible. Despite the chaos, the vessel remained silent. It had not attacked, had not communicated, and had not even slowed. Yet it had already changed the course of the galaxy. Every action taken by the Empire, every misinterpretation by neighboring powers, every reaction to fear and uncertainty had been influenced by its presence. In effect, it had started a war without ever lifting a weapon. Even those far from the frontier could feel the change. Trade routes, communications, and political alliances were all shifting in response to the new reality. The galaxy's stability, once taken for granted, was gone. Fear, suspicion, and uncertainty had replaced confidence, trust, and order. And as the vessel continued on its path, no one knew what would come next, or if anyone would be able to prevent the growing conflict from turning into a full-scale war dot by the time fleets, colonies, and the capital fully grasped the magnitude of what had happened. The chain reaction was unstoppable. The galaxy was on the brink of war, triggered not by weapons, not by politics, but by a single mysterious presence. The vessel, silent and unknowable, had demonstrated that even without violence, it could reshape the destiny of entire civilizations. And as humans prepare, the galaxy was tense. Skirmishes had begun along trade routes, fleets had been repositioned, and every colony lived under the shadow of uncertainty. Even though no one knew the vessel's intentions, its mere presence had reshaped politics, strategy, and human emotions across countless systems. Fear, suspicion, and anticipation were everywhere. Officers, scientists, and civilians alike felt the weight of what was happening, knowing that the next step could determine the fate of billions. In the Empire's research stations, teams worked tirelessly to decode the mysterious signals from the vessel. For weeks they had collected energy readings, pulse patterns, and movement data, trying to find meaning in the chaos. At first, all their attempts had failed. The pulses appeared random, the energy emissions too complex for any human technology to interpret. But then, a breakthrough came. One young analyst, working late into the night, noticed a subtle pattern. The pulses were not attacks, they were messages. Data encoded in a form humans had never seen before. The realization spread slowly at first, disbelief mingling with awe. When the council received the report, the mood shifted. Analysts explained that the vessel had not attacked and never intended to. Its purpose was not to destroy, but to warn. The data revealed fragments of information about a cosmic threat moving toward the galaxy, a force far larger and more dangerous than anything humans or their neighbors could face alone. The vessel, it seemed, had been sent centuries ago by an ancient civilization to alert future civilizations of this coming danger. The Empire had been panicked, fleets mobilized, and colonies disrupted, all because of a misunderstanding. The ship's silence had been misinterpreted as hostility. In the fleets, officers struggled to comprehend the truth. The ships that had once felt powerless now faced a new challenge. They were not confronting an enemy, but a warning. Crews who had trained for combat had to switch focus to analysis, strategy, and communication. The fear of immediate attack was replaced by the weight of responsibility. Humans had been given knowledge of a threat far beyond their current understanding, and now it was their choice whether to prepare or ignore it. Across the colonies, reactions were mixed. Some people were relieved, realizing that the mysterious vessel had not been sent to harm them. Others were frustrated, angry that so much fear and conflict had erupted due to misunderstanding. Merchants and governors recalibrated their plans, while civilians cautiously resumed travel and trade. However, the sense of urgency remained. This was not a distant problem. It was coming, and the galaxy had little time to respond. Scientists and engineers worked with renewed purpose. Every fragment of data from the vessel was analyzed and tested. Teams collaborated across fleets and colonies, combining knowledge and technology in ways that had never been attempted before. Old rivalries were set aside. For the first time, humans realized that cooperation was more important than hierarchy or pride. The challenge they faced was too great to be solved by a single faction, single fleet, or single colony. Military leaders also had to adapt. Fleets that had been positioned for war now had to be reorganized for surveillance, early warning, and defense against a threat that no one had ever faced. Officers trained crews to detect anomalies, prepare for environmental hazards, and respond to unknown forces. Exercises that had once been purely tactical became experiments in strategy, intuition, and adaptability. Every officer learned that predicting the unknown was as vital as responding to known enemies. As humans worked to understand the warning, the vessel continued its journey. It did not wait. It did not pause. It simply moved. Its pulses, now interpreted as a language, offered instructions, maps, and calculations. Analysts pieced together parts of the message, revealing star systems, gravitational anomalies, and paths of potential danger. The more they understood, the more they realized how little they knew. The vessel had been created by a civilization far beyond human comprehension, capable of thinking in ways humans could barely imagine docked in the capital. Council chambers were filled with a mix of relief and anxiety. Politicians, scientists, and officers discussed next steps. The galaxy had been on the brink of war, triggered by fear and misunderstanding. Now, humanity had an opportunity to avert disaster if they acted wisely. Plans were drafted for cooperative defense, resource allocation, and communication with neighboring factions. Messages were sent to allies, explaining the situation, sharing data, and urging joint preparation. The unknown threat was now the common enemy, and the mysterious vessel had given them the knowledge to respond. Even as preparations began, humans faced internal challenges. Fear lingered. Some people questioned whether the vessel's warning was complete or accurate. Skeptics argued that relying on a mysterious object could be dangerous. Others struggled with the scale of the task, realizing that billions of lives depended on decisions they had never been trained to make. Officers, scientists, and civilians alike had to confront their own doubts, to act despite uncertainty, and to find courage in a situation far larger than themselves. Meanwhile, in the frontier fleets, crews began to see the vessel in a new light. No longer a threat, it was now a guide. Pilots adjusted their courses according to the maps provided in the pulses. Engineers modified shields and sensors to align with the data. Every ship became a node in a network, receiving instructions, testing outcomes, and refining strategies. Humanity was learning to interpret the alien logic, to see the universe through a lens never imagined before. As communication improved, humans discovered one vital truth. The mysterious vessel had given them a chance. Many civilizations, if left to panic and misunderstanding, might have destroyed each other before recognizing the real danger. Humanity had been tested not by force, but by perception, fear, and readiness to act wisely. Those who embraced cooperation and adaptability would survive. Those who allowed suspicion and anger to dominate might not. The vessel had shown them that understanding was more powerful than weapons. The message also revealed the scale of the threat. It was not a single enemy or a fleet. It was a force capable of altering stars, disrupting systems, and erasing civilizations. The galaxy had little time to prepare, and yet, for the first time, humans felt hope. The vessel had illuminated a path, offered insight, and revealed the need for unity. Humanity had been given knowledge, and knowledge could be the difference between survival and extinction. Throughout this period, crews, scientists, and citizens experienced a profound shift. Fear was replaced by purpose, panic by determination, and confusion by clarity. People worked together across fleets and colonies, sharing data, offering support, and learning to act in unison. The mysterious vessel, silent and enigmatic, had not only warned them of danger, but had also inspired a new way of thinking, a reminder that the galaxy was vast, mysterious, and that cooperation was essential. By the time the first coordinated preparations were complete, humans had transformed. They had learned to adapt to the unknown, to respond to unprecedented challenges, and to act despite fear. The vessel's journey through the galaxy had sparked chaos, yes, but it had also catalyzed growth, unity, and a new understanding of their place in the cosmos. Humanity was no longer naive. They had been tested and had begun to rise to the challenge. In the end, the vessel's origin was revealed. It was a warning beacon, created by a civilization long extinct. Its purpose had always been to prevent future civilizations from falling into destruction. And though it had sparked panic, fear, and near conflict, it had ultimately given humanity an invaluable gift: knowledge. With that knowledge, humans could prepare, adapt, and perhaps survive what was coming, even as the vessel continued on its path, moving into the depths of space beyond the Empire's borders. Its presence remained a lesson. The galaxy was not just a place of conflict, it was a place of learning, discovery, and growth. Humans had glimpsed the unknown, faced fear, and found the strength to respond. They had been given a choice, and they had chosen to act wisely. And so, the galaxy began to change. Fleets, colonies, and civilizations adapted to new realities. Plans were made, alliances formed, and preparations for the coming threat were underway. The mysterious vessel had come, not to conquer or destroy, but to guide. Its silent journey had reshaped the Empire, awakened humanity's potential, and reminded them that even in the face of the unknown, understanding, courage, and cooperation could light the way.